So what happens? What's the things that people do in situations? They panic buy. Why? There's a lot of reasons. But there's a psychology to it. And last night I got to talk to a doctor from Baylor, and some of the stuff he told me was really interesting. Again, this guy's a doctor, and his thing is he looks at the psychology of how consumers spend their money and why they do the things they do.
I think it's a common response to the anxiety that's related to bad weather. So I don't think it's anything that we can consider to be illogical or not logical, but I think we have to be a little bit more measured in our response. But it's a common social, psychological response to perceived threat, right? Bad weather is a threat. We could run out of food. We could be stuck in our homes. And so, no, I don't think it's uncommon to be afraid of bad weather and maybe the possible food shortages that are associated with it. But I think it's also common that oftentimes we overestimate the threat, and that kind of leads to panic buying.
And that is really interesting, that we overestimate the threat. No, wait, that's what we do. We overthink things. And one of the things we do, and it's funny because, so my other show, my producer's in Atlanta, and he texted me this morning something about French toast. And I'm like, that's funny because that's what this guy says that people do. It's like, it's about comfort food, and it's French toast.
Yeah, I love it. Again, it's called the French toast syndrome. Again, I'm not much of a cook, but that means that when we do have these types of panic buying, often people go and turn to the staples of bread, eggs, and milk. So they call it the French toast syndrome. I think that's a great way to put a funny spin on this whole idea of panic buying.
And, because I've been through a lot of crappy weather, having traveled all over. I've been to all kinds of crappy weather. And sometimes it's about, how the place deals with the weather, right? Like, let's be real. Like 4 inches in Ohio isn't going to make a difference. 4 inches here, well, we're not really set up for it. Texas, they're not set up for it. They're getting their snowmageddon starting tonight. But for other places, it's fine. But there's been a run on stuff. Why? Somebody goes, I got to go to Costco. Why? So you go buy a bunch of crap, and then you come home, you got 12 gallons of mayonnaise, right? You got 16 chapsticks.
Your pantry is nothing but bread.
Right, yeah. It's like, because you seem to think that this is, this may be it. Like and I'm fascinated by that, because just like when COVID hit, what did everybody do? They ran out and bought toilet paper. Like, there was never going to be toilet paper again? You remember how many people bought toilet paper? And it was, we don't have toilet paper. You're just like, are you kidding me? Wait, why are you buying toilet paper? Well, because of COVID. COVID's a respiratory illness. You're not going to be, vomiting and all this. No. We panic and we look for comfort.
But I think the most important thing is to remember that everyone else is going through the same kind of problem that you are, and for you to run in and go, fill up on, take all the milk or all the eggs and things like that just leaves other people without. And I think our heightened panic buying, or our panic buying has been heightened by the recent COVID, right? We all remember about the toilet paper shortages.
Oh, yes. Yes. Do you ever say to yourself, when you're in a situation, you start looking around going, all right, if something was to go down and we needed to eat, who am I going to kill and eat? Who's the one going down? Who's the guy I'm going to get? Like, I'm fine. I'm going to be okay. Right? But is it my neighbor? Right? Like, is it Jim? Jim, is that you out there? You start looking around like, I might have to. Because there is it's go back in your subconscious. It's a primeval kind of thing. It's stuff that has happened throughout our history. There's just something back there that tells us we've got to hunt and gather and protect.
Why do we react with panic buying when we're threatened? Again, shopping is a way to reduce anxiety. We actually call it in research, we call it something called mortality, our own, life and death, existential, but mortality salience. The idea when we're threatened, we find comfort in things that we can buy. Like in war times and times really, could be COVID, certainly a lot of compulsive shopping because those, amassing things make us feel better. It kind of helps us to reduce, maybe even help us distract us from the anxiety we're feeling about, COVID or about the impending storm.
But there are people out there that, they still are terrified of COVID. There are people out there that have panic buy because they think that everything's going to be closed. And it's just a fascinating way to look at stuff. And psychology is the greatest sales book in the world. If you want a sales book, don't go get a sales book. Go get a psychology book. Find out what makes somebody tick. And that's how you win. So what's your panic buy? If you were to panic buy, you had to have one thing. Like, what could you survive on for a week or two? Because that's the way you have to look at it. Like, for me, I'm like, I should go get a bunch of Top Ramen. You can eat it raw if you have to. It's cheap. It'll never, Twinkies, right? They're never going to go away. Those things will last forever. But the psychology of why we panic buy is crazy. It absolutely is. Last night I went home and I was telling the guys, I said, I had to go home. And I did work for a station of mine out in Texas because they're having lots of issues. Their people couldn't get there. And the thing I noticed, the difference between the way that California's handled things. So you see Gavin Newsom out there. It's about having a picture. It's about, being able to make sure that you're in front of the right cameras and you're blaming everybody else for the issues that are going on as your city burns. And then juxtapose that against Texas. So 2021, they got smashed and the power grid fell apart. It did. It was horrible. Not only did it fall apart, this week the Supreme Court of Texas held up a lawsuit and said it was fine. Yes, you can go through with it, where they're suing all the power companies for the deaths, the loss of not just lives, but livelihoods and all of these things, businesses. And so that's going to go on. But the power grid was still a mess. So what did they do? They threw money into the power grid.
The current cold snap is a bitter reminder of the deep freeze of 2021 when millions of homes and businesses across Texas lost electricity. Governor Greg Abbott says that because of infrastructure hardening since then.
If there is a loss of power, it's not going to be because of the power grid, it's because of some impact on a local power line.
Like a downed utility pole or a tree falling into wires. Utility providers say there's more than enough generating capacity to meet this week's added demand.
Which is what you do